I know, here's one for you. Landlords and tenants. Landlord fined for breaching WA tenancy laws amid Perth housing crisis. A landlord who demanded more than $32,000 from a tenant before they had even moved in, then threatened to kick them out if they didn't agree to a huge rent hike, has been fined for a string of breaches of WA's tenancy laws. The case has laid bare the desperation of renters who are often willing to hand over large sums of money to secure a property in Perth's tight rental market. The woman was handed a spent conviction and fined $8,500 in the Perth Magistrate Court on May the 16th for violations relating to her handling of rent and bond payments for the property in the southern suburb of Ardross, which is quite an affluent suburb. In February 2024, the New South Wales-based landlord entered into a tenancy agreement and demanded the tenant pay $16,200 to cover the first 3 months of rent before they had moved in. Consumer Protection's John McMaster told ABC Radio Perth that this was a significant breach of the laws, which prohibited landlords for asking more than 2 weeks' rent in advance. Let's just stop it there. The law, there shouldn't be a law saying how much you can ask in advance at all. There should just be a contract between a tenant and a landlord, nothing to do with any legislators. So if a landlord wishes to say, well, I would like a year up front, if the tenant's happy with that, they can do a deal. They can work a contract out and do a deal. That used to happen. The landlord also asked for a further $16,200 from the tenant as a security bond. Once again, there's a limit on how much bond you can ask for, but that's with the law, the so-called law. It's not law, it's legislation. None of their business. It's nobody's business how much a landlord asks for a bond. If we had a free market, we wouldn't have a shortage for a start, but we'll get to that. We wouldn't have a shortage of properties. And if we had a country, if we still had a country, they wouldn't have doubled the population in the last 20 years and put all this pressure on rents and written all the legislation in favour of the tenants to stop people wanting to be landlords. The amount of people, I mean, I'm in the game, the amount of people when in Queensland they passed the law to say that you pretty much can't stop a tenant having a dog. You have to have minimum standards. You have to have heating and cooling and locks on all the windows and hardwired smoke alarms and on it goes until the cost is out of control. And that and the insurance and the council rates, even with these high rents, there's no margin. And you've got to manage people. You've got to, if you want a few rental properties, you're going to have to probably employ an agent unless you want to get right into it yourself. Some people do, but so there's a whole lot of rigmarole where, for better money, you can just go and buy shares in BHP. And what do you think? The landlords, that's what I was getting to. As soon as those laws passed, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. The landlords came into our office and said, sell that rental property, please. We don't want it anymore. It's a liability now, and it used to be an asset. But anyway, I'll carry on. She only lodged $5,400 of the money with the bond administrator 4 months after receiving the money. And once again, there should be no such thing as the bond administrator. Do you think, do you think that governments don't lie? Do you think that governments don't cheat? Do you think that people in the government don't manipulate things their own way, like human nature? Of course they do. That's a risk. That's a huge risk. What's the bet? What's the bet that all that dough is not really there? And they bank on the fact, they do fractional reserve bond holding. They bank on the fact that everyone's going to ask for the bond all at the same time. I bet it's not all there. Can't prove it. Anyway, the remaining $10,800 was lodged with the administrator following the initiation of prosecution action by Consumer Protection. McMaster said landlords were required to lodge bonds within 14 days and needed to be especially careful to comply with the law when holding large sums of tenants' money. This has nothing to do with the government. It's not their business, whoever the government are. They just wrote laws down on bits of paper and made it so it's not really your property anymore. You've got to send the bond off to a government department. And don't think for a minute that, we need all these protections and we need the government to do this because landlords are unscrupulous and they'll keep the bonds and hold it to them and they'll say the cleaning's not good enough. In a free market where there is contract law between two parties and there's no third-party interference like we have now, justice is usually served. Yes, there's always someone that does the wrong thing, but there is much cheaper and better ways of handling, and it's pretty much eliminated. If you get a bad reputation as a landlord, you can't rent your place out because there's a lot of places for rent because of free market competition. So the unscrupulous get shifted out of the market. The same as the baker that bakes stale bread every day. He goes and becomes a butcher. Whatever he has to do, but he doesn't even exist. He never turns up because the free market provides such good bread all across everywhere that people have the choice of buying good bread. So one guy's, you just can't sell stale bread. He goes broke. Like even in this restricted market, he'll go broke, but that's how it works. The bad plumbers don't even come to fruition. Handling security bond money is a serious matter because it's a lot of money for the tenant. And if that money is misused or not registered, there are serious penalties, he said. Threatened with eviction. About a month before the due date for further rent, the landlord demanded the renter pay an extra $2,700 rent per fortnight, threatening to evict them if the extra money was not paid. That's a good one, landlord. Commissioner for Consumer Protection Owen Kelly said the Residential Tenancies Act was a vital safeguard for tenants. Bullshit, Owen Kelly. The Residential Tenancies Act has caused the problems that we have. That and the immigration, but the Residential Tenancies Act is the problem. It's not a safeguard for tenants. Look what it did. It didn't stop this happening. It caused it. It restricted the supply of rental properties, which causes this. Perth's vacancy rate was 2.4% in April, down from 2.5% in March. My God, as if you would notice. According to Real Estate Institute of WA, when tenants have fewer options, they may have little to no power to negotiate with landlords before or during the tenancy. And they would have the power if there was plenty of rentals available. And the reason there's no rentals available is because no one wants to be a bloody landlord. Because it is very stressful very expensive complying with all the stupid rules, and very stressful. A tenant can move into a property in Queensland. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Victoria would be worse. And say, we don't have an animal. You're approved. 2 weeks later, they can put in a form and say, we're going to have a dog. And the landlord has to cite a strata titled law to be able to stop that. That's about it. Otherwise, you can't say no. So you thought you weren't getting a dog in your property, then you were. Nothing you can do because of a third-party law. So that the landlord has no rights. That's why there's no bloody rental properties, as well as it's not economically viable. It's been the landlord's been priced out of the market. So we have immigration putting huge pressure on Australia's infrastructure, and we have legislation to just kick everyone in the guts. Therefore, it's crucial landlords respect the laws that have been put in place to protect them. Well, they can't help but respect the laws because they're going to get done, aren't they? The tenant in this case was subjected to unnecessary risk by being asked to pay 3 months' rent up front before moving in. It was also placed under unnecessary financial burden when further rent demands were made before that initial period had expired. And this would not happen. There would be no stress on the tenant if there was plenty of properties available. Because the tenant can just say, you're joking, mate. I'm not fucking falling for that one. Go and get someone else. I'll go and rent up the road. I've got another 5 I can look at, and they won't be idiots. Or there's plenty of rentals available, and the tenant says, yeah, whatever you want. I'll pay you 3 months up front. That's okay. That's between the landlord and the tenant. But now we have, it's like, how about we get some goons and we'll put a sign up on the side of the road that says 80. And then anyone that does more than that 80, we'll put a camera on the side of the road and we'll send them a fine. Good trick. It's good work if you can get it, eh? No. We'll just make this little rule, and then we can fuck everyone. How's that? The landlord told the court she was unaware of her obligations under the Residential Tenancies Act, but in handing down the sentence, Magistrate Donald Webb said ignorance was no excuse of the law was no excuse. So, once again, this is a government-driven problem, and it causes people, landlords like this, to become unscrupulous because there is so much pressure on the market. The opening to do things like this is there, and there'd be another 1,000 out there of tenants that have put up with that have actually not complained to anybody and gone, well, we can't be bothered going through the rigmarole of taking them to court, and we can cop it, so they'll be paying it. I bet you. It's this. If the system was so good, how come they didn't pick it up? That the landlord didn't put all the deposit, the bond into the administration board or whatever it's called. How come? They can't police it. Just like modern policing. They clean up a mess. They don't prevent crime. But none of this should be a crime. It should be just the tenant should be able to go and be an individual, and there should be lots of rentals available for him to just say, sorry, mate, I'm not copping that. I don't have to do that. Yeah. I'll take another one up the road. And if we were still grown-ups, the tenant could negotiate with the landlord. This especially ABC, it all comes from the idea that all landlords are somehow smarter, always richer, and more unscrupulous, must be unscrupulous. Tenants can do no wrong. It's like Biden good, Trump bad. Landlord's bad, tenant's good. That's how all the laws are written, because they're all left-wing fucktards. They're all socialists. We're in a socialist country that is an authoritarian socialist regime, and we're seeing the effects of that now. The lack of a free market causes this rubbish to happen. So 3 cheers for the Tenancy Act to stuff everything up, and for the country to not become a country anymore. If we were a country, we would have a say on who comes in here, wouldn't we? That's another topic. I'll have to have a talk about that on another video. Oh, sorry. One more thing. Where is the fine going to go? Once the landlord's been paid that $8,500 fine and got their suspended sentence, what are they going to do with the $8,500? Give it to the tenant? I bet they're not. See you on the next one.